Thursday night, I sat at my desk with my heart pounding in my throat, refreshing my wallet balance, waiting to find out if my family's savings were still there. Over 1,300 Bitcoin was drained straight out of cold storage over the weekend. Not off an exchange, not out of some hot wallet on a phone, out of hardware wallets sitting in people's safes belonging to long-term holders who did every single thing they were told to do. So does this mark the beginning of the end of Bitcoin self-custody? Are we better off handing our Bitcoin to BlackRock? Was not your keys, not your coins just a massive LARP? Today, I want to carefully walk you through what actually broke, what it's going to take for self-custody to survive this, and why the whole tragic event has made me ponder the way I think about trust, faith, hope, and what we're all actually doing here. I'm not going to cover this ColdCard tragedy from the outside. Thursday evening, I saw a post on X about a vulnerability specific to ColdCard Mark III devices. I've used a Mark III for my stack for years. Then I read that if you rolled your own dice for Entropy and used a passphrase, you were probably fine. I did both. So I felt this wave of relief and told myself I'd probably move the funds in the morning for extra caution. Then I went back on Twitter a couple hours later, and it was the stories. People's entire life savings gone. The scope kept expanding by the hour. More models, more firmware versions. The ground just kept moving. Fear started to rise. So I opened my Sparrow wallet to check my balance. My heart was pounding at this point. Panic coming up into my throat, just waiting for it to refresh. My funds appeared. And right there, I decided I wasn't waiting until morning. I stayed up late moving all of my funds to a new wallet that night. The only reason I still have my Bitcoin is that a few years ago, I decided to nerd out and roll dice for my Entropy with my new ColdCard. I did it mostly for fun and the novelty of it. At the time, I honestly thought it was completely unnecessary. That's the margin. That's it. So before anything else, because this is still happening as I record, if you generated your seed on any ColdCard, any model, move your funds today. Not this week, today. And if you move that seed onto a different brand of wallet, you're still exposed, because the weakness is in the seed itself. If you're not technical, you could send it to whatever exchange you bought it from temporarily, or a reputable phone wallet while you sort out a proper setup. The most important thing is to try not to panic. Just move calmly and deliberately. Galaxy Research has counted 1,367 Bitcoin swept out of 4,585 addresses across 3 waves, and a 4th one looks like it's running today. And Galaxy's read of the data tells you what this really is. Smaller addresses dominate by count, larger ones by value. That's the shape of individual self-custody, not institutional holdings. The average coin taken had been sitting untouched for over 3 years. These were the patient hodlers of Bitcoin. So how could something like this happen? If the most respected, air-gapped, open-source Bitcoin-only hardware wallet on the market quietly produced guessable keys for 5.5 years, and the whole industry missed it, what is a normal person supposed to verify? Answering that question starts with what a private key actually is. Rob Hamilton runs AnchorWatch, and he's been one of the many heroes working around the clock helping people personally move their funds all weekend. He was on Coin Stories with Natalie Brunell for an emergency update on the situation.
Maybe the best way to start is let's talk about a deck of cards. A card deck is a really great way to play games, because if you have 52 cards in a deck, every time you shuffle them, there are more possible ways you can arrange the cards in the deck of cards than there are atoms in the observable universe, right? There is just so many
deck of cards?
Yeah. So this is really kind of the beautiful part of cryptography when it works correctly, is that you can take very simple things and make abundantly complicated things. The way Bitcoin works ultimately is I have a very large number that you will never be able to guess. That is the simplest way to break down how Bitcoin security works. The issue what we have here is that instead of dealing with, say, a full deck of cards, we are only dealing with 20 cards in the deck. And the thing is 20 still sounds like a large number, but it greatly reduces the possible number of ways you can arrange that deck of cards. And that allows you to basically, without ever talking to the hardware wallet, know that instead of looking at the universe of the full deck of cards, you're looking at a subset, and it allows you to aggressively, very quickly guess all of the random combinations. If your Bitcoin is basically a needle in a cosmic level haystack, what's happening here is someone found the exact area of the pile of hay and is just rapidly combing through every single strand to try and find where the Bitcoin sits.
So let's put real numbers on that deck of cards analogy. A 24-word seed carries 256 bits of randomness. The number of possible wallets has 78 digits in it. And plenty of you use 12 words, So let me be clear, because I've watched people panic about this over the weekend. 12 words is 128 bits, about 340 undecillion, a 3 followed by 38 digits. Both are unbreakable. 12 words was never the problem. If all 8 billion people on Earth generated a billion seed phrases every second, it would take 1.6 trillion years before there was even a coin flip's chance that two of them landed on the same wallet. Now here's what ColdCard shipped. On the Mark II and Mark III, that collapsed to roughly 40 bits. Not 256, 40. About a trillion possibilities. And a trillion is nothing. A laptop can chew through a trillion. On the MK4, MK5, and Q, CoinKite's own figure is 72 bits, and Block's engineers put the real added entropy closer to 32. The search space stopped being the observable universe and became a room. Once it's a room, you don't break any cryptography. You just walk through it until you find money. Roughly 93,000 ColdCard seeds is all it would take before two complete strangers get handed the exact same wallet. CoinKite has pointed to AI code review as how this got found. That could be true, but it changes nothing, because AI didn't break anything here. The code was open and readable, sitting in public view for 5.5 years. So let's call this what it is. This was gross negligence. A developer switched off the hardware random number generator to silence a compiler error he didn't understand, shipped it under a one-word commit message, and nobody checked. That was March 2021, and it sat there until Thursday. And I'm not extending CoinKite any grace here. They charged a premium for being the only serious option, all while running a documented history of downplaying security disclosures and stiffing the researchers who brought them bugs. They treated security as a marketing department, and thousands of people just paid for it with their savings. But let me be very clear here. Bitcoin's cryptography did not fail this week. Not one line of it. The math held perfectly, the way it has for 17 years. The problem was that one company never gave it any randomness to work with. This was a hardware wallet company epically failing at the one thing it's trusted to get right in generating your private key. Now, if all of this has caused you to wonder whether your own setup is sound, and you have no idea how you'd even check, that's not a dumb question this week. It might be the smartest one you can ask. And that's exactly what the Bitcoin way does. With the Bitcoin way, you get on a call with a real person who walks you through your setup with you, that can teach you what you're actually holding instead of selling you a box and wishing you luck. No question is too simple or too complex for the Bitcoin way. Multi-sig, passphrases, inheritance, verifying your own transactions with your own node, or even rolling your own entropy. Now is the time to get expert one-on-one counsel. So visit thebitcoinway.com/Hurley, and your first 30-minute consultation is absolutely free. Last November, the creator of Seed Signer got asked what actually keeps him up at night about hardware wallets. Listen to how precisely he describes what happened to thousands of people last week.
Someone breaking into your house is definitely a concern, but what I worry more about is, let's say I set up a hardware wallet and I set it up using a private key that wasn't generated with sufficient entropy, that was somehow guessable or predictable by someone else. And you think you've got, X number of sats in your wallet. And then one day you wake up and go to check your balance. And because someone else owned your key before you did, or was able to guess it somehow, your Bitcoin's gone. That is a nightmare scenario and something that some people have experienced.
8 months before it emptied 4,500 wallets on one of the biggest podcasts in Bitcoin. This guy isn't a prophet. He described the failure mode any serious engineer knows sits at the base of the stack. It seems the alarm worked fine, but nobody was standing near it. Which brings me to the part I've had the hardest time with. In Bitcoin, we say don't trust, verify. I've said it on this show many times. I believe it. And this week it started sounding uncomfortably close to something we say rather than something we do. I'll be real with you. I personally don't have the skills to audit a code base. But here's what really got me. The hardcore guys couldn't either. The cypherpunks, the people who bought that device precisely because it was open source, they didn't verify it either. Nobody did. And the harsh reality is that open source only works when somebody actually reads it. So we need to be honest about something we've been sloppy with. Bitcoin is not fully trustless for the vast majority of users. It's trust minimized. Those are two different claims, and the gap between them is exactly where thousands of people lost their savings. We trusted the reputation. We trusted the years of security researchers hammering away at the device. And here's the humiliating part. They were hammering on the hardware the whole time. The hardware was fine. The whole sat in the open, one function up, in code a competent developer could read in an afternoon. So is self-custody dead? Let's take the argument at full strength, because there's a real number behind it. River's custody report from last year puts roughly 1.6 million coins lost through self-custody mistakes, against roughly 1.2 million lost through exchanges. Self-custody is a monumental responsibility, and it has real cost if not done carefully and deliberately. But the self-custody losses are spread across 17 years and millions of individual mistakes. The exchange losses come from 8 companies. Mt. Gox alone was 700,000 coins. 8 companies hacked, defrauded, or gambled away with a different failure every time, and with one thing in common. Not a single one of those people was holding their own keys. And Mt. Gox taught Bitcoin the importance of self-custody. It was brutal. It took years to absorb, and the entire industry that exists today got built on that lesson. This week teaches the next one. Holding your own keys was never enough on its own if you never understood how those keys were made. Just watch what's happening right now. Everything that was niche and paranoid 8 days ago is becoming baseline. Entropy, dice rolls, passphrases, multisig, reproducible builds. Hundreds of thousands of people learned what a random number generator is this week. And that knowledge doesn't leave. But I want to be honest about the other side too. Telling a normal person the way to be safe is to roll 100 dice by hand is not a real answer. My own mother is never rolling 100 dice. And she shouldn't have to. My stack survived because I found rolling dice interesting and fun one afternoon. That's not a system. That's providence dressed up as security. So self-custody is still early. It's clunky, and it's too easy to get wrong. And right now, it generally isn't for everyone. Saying that out loud isn't a betrayal of the ethos. It's the only thing that makes the ethos survivable. The tools have to get better. And the one good thing about a week like this is the fire it lights under every builder working on that problem. American HODL said the only silver lining here is that most of our friends and family never listen to us. That one really resonated with me. I never recommended the ColdCard device widely, and not because I was clever. I always saw it for what it was, a niche product for advanced users. And that's the only reason I'm not carrying something much heavier this week. And this isn't theoretical for me, because when I moved my funds early Friday morning, the setup I moved them to was a BitKey. And I'm happy to say that this show is sponsored by BitKey. BitKey is a 2 of 3 multisig right out of the box. 3 keys generated independently in 3 different environments. One on your phone, one on the hardware device, and one in a server module. No single key can move your money, so a bug in any one of those entropy sources can't touch your Bitcoin on its own. With BitKey, the setup is simple and takes 5 minutes, and it doesn't require you to understand a word of what I just said in order to be protected from this. That's why it's now the first wallet I recommend to every new person I talk to. And right now they are having a generous 15% off sale and free next day shipping. And when you go to bitkey.world/truth and use the promo code TRUTH, you get an additional 10% for a total of 25% off a new BitKey. Now let me zoom out a bit, because there's a tell this week that almost nobody is talking about. Just look at what landed all at once. The largest self-custody exploit in Bitcoin history. Strategy selling another 1,638 coins last week and not buying a single one since the 3rd week of June. A regulatory deadline days away, with a real risk that legislators look at this tragedy and decide the answer is pushing everyone back into regulated custody. Japan intervened in the yen, with the US Treasury openly backing the play, and the global carry trade that funded everything for 20 years coming apart underneath it. And through all of this, Bitcoin has barely moved and is actually up a bit on the day. Any of those headlines alone would have been a 30% drawdown. Now they land together and the market shrugs. That's an asset absorbing the worst week it's had in years and refusing to break. And it's important underlining why the regulatory fight matters. The moment holding your own Bitcoin becomes something you need permission to do, Bitcoin stops being different from every other system that came before it. Which brings me to what this week was really about. Which companies will open their books when you ask? Which brings me to Ledn. Ledn lets you borrow against your Bitcoin instead of selling it, with fixed 12-month terms and up to 50% loan to value funded in days. Plus, Ledn was the first Bitcoin-backed lender in the world to publish a proof of reserve attestation in January 2021, and it's the longest-standing program in the industry. They publish an open book report, and your collateral is held in custody and never relent to anybody. That's a company showing its work before anybody forced it to. So go to learn.ledn.io/simply to learn more about Bitcoin-backed loans. So here's where I've landed after sitting with this all weekend. Every disaster in Bitcoin's history has done the same thing. It finds a place where trust was hiding, and it pushes it out. Mt. Gox found trust hiding inside exchanges and pushed it out to the individual. This week found trust hiding inside a negligent vendor and pushed it one layer closer still. Bitcoin doesn't get safer by adding guarantees. It gets safer by running out of places for a lie to live. That's what antifragile actually means. It doesn't mean nothing breaks. It means the only true things survive contact with reality. The system is 17 years old and reality is still going through it, finding what isn't true and burning it out. That costs real people real money, and it's exactly why this thing keeps getting harder to kill. But that's just the money. And the last thing I want to say has nothing to do with money. We like to say that putting our hope in Bitcoin isn't blind faith, that it's rooted in mathematics, game theory, and incentives. That's mostly true, but this week made me sit with something. Bitcoin's success is not 100% certain. We love the word inevitable, but this is still in a lot of ways an experiment. It's a worthy one, built on principles I'd give my life to, but still an experiment. There's a kind of faith in it whether we admit it or not. Bitcoin is money. Better money. More honest money, technically and morally, than anything human beings have ever built. Bitcoin will not make you a better parent. It won't make you a better friend, or a more present husband or wife, or a more helpful neighbor. It will not fill the hole. It never has for anyone, at any price. And to everyone who lost coins this week, I want to speak to you directly. There are no words that make this right. What was taken from you was real, and it was earned, and it mattered, and I'm sorry. But if you're sitting in the dark tonight, please hear this. You are alive. You are breathing. There are things in your life today worth being grateful for that nobody can sweep out of a wallet. There are worse things one can lose in this world than money. Don't let the people who failed you take you somewhere dark. My prayer coming out of this is that it points us past the thing itself. Everything good, everything true, all the love and the beauty and the joy we're really chasing when we chase security and comfort. It came from somewhere. It has a source, and nothing in this material world was ever going to stand in for it. We don't put our ultimate hope in a device. We don't put it in magic internet money either. That isn't a knock on Bitcoin. That's letting Bitcoin be what it is instead of asking it to be what it can't. Self-custody didn't die this week. Trust in a company died. Those are very different things. And the thing worth putting your ultimate trust in was never something you could hold in your hand. So what do you think? Has this week changed how you self-custody, or has it made you more determined to hold your own keys? And where do you place your hope today? Be honest and drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this video helped you, share it with anyone you know who has ever touched a ColdCard or thinks this spells the end of Bitcoin. Hit the like button and subscribe to Simply Bitcoin for more content every day. Thanks for bearing with me to the end, and I'll see you Thursday.